You see, the honest truth about data analysis is that it is possible for you to niche down and focus on analyzing a specific type of data set. For example, let's assume you have a business background. Let's say you studied more of business administration during your undergraduate days in university. It only makes sense for you to tilt towards analyzing business data. That's actually fine. Or maybe you are actually having like a medical or this health sort of background. It only makes sense that you want to analyze more of medical and health data because you will be familiar with some of the wordings and variables that we have in that sector. But the honest truth is that before you get to the level where you can actually niche down, you have to pass through the level of you analyzing several data sets that comes your way from different sector, from different niche, right? Take myself for example. I have been opportune to analyze data from finance field, from the business field, from the medical and health field, from the economics field, from the education field, and all other fields that I can't even remember right now. So when you do something like this, when you analyze data sets across multiple fields, it helps you to learn new things every day. And that is one of the reasons why I'm making this video, because in today's video I would be analyzing an economic data set, and to be specific, it is a Nigerian economic data set between the year of 1990 down to 2023. For those of you that don't know, Nigeria is one of the largest country in Africa and one of the countries in Africa with the very large economy, and at some point in time we had the highest GDP in Africa. So it's a bit personal and a bit interesting at the same time for me to analyze the data set from my country. So without further ado, let's get into the video and start learning this properly. Now, the honest truth is that this will be the second video of me on my channel analyzing a data set. The first video was me analyzing the Superstore data set, which was more of a business inclined data set, and that video did so well, and it is my best performing video ever. So if you have not watched that video, I will implore you to watch that. Although you don't need to watch that to be able to watch this, but it will make sense for you to watch that, then probably watch this. Okay, I am going to be using some of the things I mentioned in that video, some of the tactics I mentioned in that video. I'll be using it to analyze this video right here. This data set was shared to me by a friend on Twitter. Her name is Olawumi, and shout out to Olawumi, by the way. I really appreciate her. Okay, she's a very good person. So she mentioned she entered my DM and she was like, "Hey Abefe, what's up? I have this data set with me, blah 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 blah." And I think this data set is not something that you just perform basic descriptive statistics on and just summarize with the mean median mode. I think there is more analysis, there is more to be done with this data set, and she shared that data set with me. And to be honest with you, she's actually right, because this is an economic data set. So trying to just use bar charts, pie charts, or basic EDA and descriptive statistics will not tell a full story about the data set. So I told her I'm going to work on the data set and take my time on it. And I think a few days after she shared that data set to me, I did a bit of basic descriptive statistics. I just summarized the data set, looked for some little patterns here and there, and nothing much. And I actually made a post about that data set. Okay, and a lot of people were telling me to make a thread about it, or probably make a video about it on my channel. But here we are. I would actually be analyzing this data set right here. So before I jump into analyzing the data set with Excel and maybe SPSS also, I want you guys to know that this is an economic data set, and since it's an economic data set, I would be approaching the data set from the standpoint of economics and econometrics, and to be specific, econometrics, because econometrics is needed. It's something that I need to analyze this data set. For those of you that don't know, econometrics is actually a branch of economics that uses statistical techniques to model economic situation. So that simply means that these data sets will not only be analyzed rather from the economic standpoint, but I'll also be using a couple of statistical techniques to work on this data set. So now let me make something clear to you. There is a chance that I will be switching between Excel and SPSS when I'm analyzing this data set, because I feel like there are some things that Excel can do. There are some things that SPSS can do that Excel cannot do. Meaning, SPSS is more of a statistical tool, you understand, compared to Excel that is more of a data manipulation and a basic data analysis tool. So when it comes to me analyzing the data from the statistical standpoint using advanced statistical techniques, maybe not advanced, but don't get scared, I will be switching to SPSS. But I'm trying to let you know that SPSS is also very simple to work with, so that's just it. I'll be switching between Excel and SPSS. So without further ado, let's get the data set, move to Excel, and start analyzing. So the first step to analysis is to get our data set. Okay, I have the data set right here, but I will be showing you how I got my data set. So I actually got the data set from Cargo, and this is the site rather. So this link, I will be copying it and I will be adding it to the description of this video so you can check that out. So when I was talking about the last video, I mentioned that whenever you would want to analyze a data set, you need to pay attention to three things. Okay, so the first is for you to understand the aims and objective of the data. That is, you should get a bit of context regarding the data set. Now, the data set right here that was given to us has a bit of context and something more or less like aims and objective. It says that the greatest economy in Africa is that of Nigeria. Okay, now the gross domestic product, GDP, which represents the total cost of goods and services generated in Nigeria, is a key indicator of the country's economic development. So they've given you this bit of tip that GDP is what we use to measure how much the economy of the country is actually developing. Okay, now in this data analysis, we will decide on the potential future of Nigeria's growth. So it simply means that the data is focused on analyzing Nigeria's growth, whether the country is developing well, it's growing or not, and examine some potential variables that could slow down the country's pace of development. So we want to see if Nigeria is going to grow, and also what are those things that are going to be slowing down the country's growth. We will also examine the role that leadership may play in the country's expansion. So when you try to summarize it, it simply means that we want to see between the period of 1990 to 2023, we want to see if the country was growing or not, or it was developing, and what were the things that added to the development of the country or not. And in the last part of it, you're supposed to talk about how leadership affects the growth of the country. Now that leads me to the second aspect of data analysis. You need to understand your data. So it's very obvious that we have an economic data. It's very straightforward. So that means we'll be approaching the data set from the standpoint of economics. Now if you open your data set, you'll realize that we have the full Nigeria economy right here. That's from 1990 down to 2023. Then we have 4 extra sheets for each of the presidents. So Obasanjo is one of the presidents of Nigeria. He ruled between 1999 to 2007, for those that do not know. Then we have Yaradua, then we have Goodluck, and then we have Buhari. So what's the question or the context of the aims and objective of the analysis is that after analyzing the general data set, the Nigeria economy, okay, then you can now individually analyze for each president that, and that, then compare and contrast and see which one is better. So I won't be comparing and contrasting each of the presidents tenure relative to how much they developed the economy or not, but I will actually generalize the analysis, because from the general analysis you can be able to see which president or what year were things better or not. So from the year we can be able to pinpoint, oh, this guy was better than this guy, or this guy was better than this guy, and that's like that. So I think the individual analysis of each president, I'll leave that to you. You can play around that. Okay, it's just a bit of data. It's not really much. It's just like what we have in the Nigeria economy. Look at this, from 1999 to 2007 is 4%. So exactly, so it's still just the same thing. This is just it. So, and I'll still be analyzing this in the general data. So after knowing the type of data set that you are working with, the next step is for you to understand the variable that makes up your data set. Now, when you pay attention to the variables in our data set, we can see that we have 10 of them. Okay, from year inflation rates, unemployment, government debt, down to the GDP at 2010 constant market prices. Okay, and the question mentioned that the GDP is very important, both the basic price GDP and the market price GDP. These guys are like very important. Okay, and another important thing that we need to pay attention to that determines how much a country is growing is the inflation rate and unemployment rate and government debt. Okay, so for a country that is growing or developing, okay, the unemployment rate should be reducing in the long run. The same with the government debt and the inflation rate. Okay, so that being said, I think we can dive into our analysis properly. Okay, now this is an economic data, and you can see that there is time here. Okay, like we have time from 1990 down to 2023. So it only makes sense that a time series analysis, a thorough and proper time series analysis, is performed on our data set, and to be specific, time series forecasting. So I'm supposed to perform time series forecasting to forecast the value of inflation rates probably for the next 5, 6, 7 years, unemployment, government debt, and probably GDP at 2010 constant basic prices and this other GDP. But I won't be performing the time series forecasting right here because it's quite large and it can take a whole lot of time. So I will just perform the basic time series analysis, where I will use to look at the patterns and all of that, then make a separate video to talk about time series forecasting. That reminds me, now when I was looking at the data set, I saw agriculture, industry, and services. I really did not understand what this variable meant, but in the long run I concluded that I'm assuming that in the year 1990, okay, now the average agricultural product was 3,464.72 naira, and in the year 2006 the average agricultural product is 10,222 naira. Okay, that was what I assumed. Okay, the same thing with services. So in the year 1990 the average service was assumed to have a value of 6,849 naira. So that is what I I thought of these variables. I couldn't get more information about them, but if you feel like you have more, please let me know. So there are 3 ways to analyze this data set. In fact, there are 3 statistical techniques or approach to analyze this data set. The first is to perform the descriptive statistics and exploratory data analysis, okay, where we actually try to summarize, describe, and explore the data set. Okay, now the second is the time series analysis and forecasting, which I would not be performing so much more on that because, like I said, I will make a separate video for that. The third part is to build a regression model, okay, because this is an econometric data and economic data, so it only makes sense that I build an econometric model to predict either inflation rate, the unemployment, the government debt, or any of this. So we'll get back to that. We'll definitely go that. So without further ado, let's start with the concept of descriptive statistics, and we can just do that for all of the variables. We can decide to summarize all of the variables and get what we want. So I can come down to data analysis. Okay, come to descriptive statistics, click on OK. Now I select let's take this up, click on this to take that up. Okay, then I select all of this. All right, very important. Yeah, so I label the first row, and I think that's just it. Any other thing is not really needed. I click on the summary statistics. I really don't need the confidence level for mean, and this is okay. So I click on OK. Okay, let me try to like make this excuse me. All right, so we come to home. All right, so this is the summary statistics of each of the variable we have. Oh, I shouldn't have done for year. Oh, excuse me, I shouldn't have done for year, but I'm sorry about that. So we have for inflation rates, we have for unemployment, government debt, down to the GDP at 2010 constant market prices. Okay, so for the inflation rate, the average inflation over the years from 1990 to 2023 is 0.1806. Now the minimum inflation rate is 5.4%. The maximum inflation rate is 72.84%. That is massive. That is a huge one. Okay, now the unemployment rate, okay, the average is 9.9%, and the minimum is 3.8%, and the maximum inflation rate is 40.6%. We can also talk about the government debt. We can see that the average government debt is 33.87%. The minimum government debt is 7.3%, and the maximum government debt is 11.514%. Okay, then we can do the rest and just go over these values. We can also talk about the skewness and kurtosis. So nothing really much. From the skewness value, we can see that most of the variables are a bit skewed, although the government debt data set is not really that skewed because it's having a very low skewness compared to others. So this is positively skewed. Inflation rate is positively skewed. Unemployment is also positively skewed, and all of this stuff. Okay, so nothing really much. And okay, the net taxes is having a negatively skewed data set, and services also has a negative skewness. The same can be taxes have a positive skewness. Oh, that reminds me, net taxes is not negative, this is positive. Sorry, it's skewness of positive, not negative. And industry has a negative skewness, and all of this, like, this is just the basic summary statistics. You can decide to visualize inflation rate, unemployment, just to visualize the distribution, because the variables are numerical in nature. I can just say, okay, I want to visualize this using an histogram, so I can just come right here. Let's see, let's come to recommend the chart. That's histogram, and so this is the histogram for inflation rate. Okay, let me just edit this. Histogram for inflation rate. All right, so excuse me. All right, so then I can decide to just play around the bins, and let's make it 7. All right, okay, let's bring this here. All right, so let's change this to, like, excuse me. All right, all right, this should be like 6. Let's see what 6 gives us. All right, 6 is okay. So we can see that the data set is heavily skewed towards the right. Okay, it's heavily skewed towards the right here. So that's just the interpretation of the inflation and also visualizing this. You can do all of those things for the other variables, but we really don't need to do this right now, so I can just delete this. Okay, that's fine. So the next is for us to now try to visualize and explore each of the variables themselves over the year. So we want to see how inflation rates, unemployment, government debt, and all of these numerical variables right here, how they changed over the years. Okay, and the best way to do that is to visualize it, is to try to see what happened. You'll be able to see the picture clearly. So I will be inserting a pivot table. It makes sense that way. So I insert a pivot table. Okay, yeah, so I select everything right here. That's good. Okay, I delete this. New worksheet, I want it to be pasted on a new worksheet, and click on OK, and this is our pivot table is ready. So then we have all of our variables rather on displays, and we can just interact each of this with any of this. So let's start with how inflation rates has actually changed over the year. Okay, so we can take the year and put it here, and then inflation rate, we put it right here. So we get the sum of inflation rates. Okay, so that means the total inflation rates as time goes on over the year. Okay, nothing really much. So, or we can get the average. It's still the same thing actually. Both the sum and average will be the same, because we are only given individual values for each time. So 1990 we have this, 1991 we have this, 1992 we have this. It's not like we have several values for several years, so it's gonna like be okay that way. So we can visualize this. We can insert recommended chart. I can use a line chart. Okay, sorry, excuse me. If I use a line chart, this is what we have. So this is the visualization of the total inflation rate as time goes on over the period of time. Or if you feel like you cannot see the pattern very well, you can use a bar chart. Okay, Yeah, okay, let's see. All right, now I think a line chart is okay. Sometimes you can use a bar chart, so let's use that. So when you pay attention to the inflation rate, you will see that the inflation rate was steadily increasing over time. Okay, it was increasing, and it was steadily increasing from 1990 down to 1993. At some points between 1993 and 1994, it got stable, it didn't change, and then it spiked up to get to the highest value in the I think that is 1995. So the highest inflation rate was actually in 1995 with a value of 72.84%. Then it dropped significantly. So between 1995 and 1997, the inflation rate actually dropped. Something happened in that year, and I think from history, I think that was when General Sani Abacha got into power. So maybe when he got into power, some of the policies he made and all of those stuff actually made the inflation rates to die down. Okay. But then we have a very low inflation rate, and in fact, from 1998, the inflation rate still dropped down, and from 2000, it picked up, it spiked 2001, it became a bit stable, then dropped down in 2007, then from 2007 down to 2022, sorry, from 2008 rather, down to 2022, it was steadily moving, not really increasing that much. It was just steady, and that is how inflation was actually moving. Okay, now we can decide to do the same thing for government debt. Okay, let's see, for unemployment. Okay, so we can see that for unemployment, now see, the unemployment was literally stable. So that means the rate of unemployment was like how will I say this? It was very minimal, it was very low, and it was stable. So look at it from the year of 0.056, from the 1990 down to sort of, let's say, 2011. The unemployment rate was very steady, was very low. Like the minimum was 0.056. Excuse me. No, the minimum was 0.041. You understand, very low value, and the maximum unemployment rate was around 0.06. Okay, and then 2012 came and it skyrocketed, and the unemployment rate just went up like boom, and everything just kept fluctuating, and then it got to one highest point at 2018, and that was 22.6%, and it's dropped again from 2018 to 2019, and in 2020 it went up, and we got here, and it's just from 2021 I sort of 2020 it was at 33%, and between 2020 and 2022 or 2023 rather, it just got to the all-time highest. So in the year 2023, which was last year, the unemployment rate of the country was it was bad. What happened, I really can't say, to be honest. Okay, so let's come about the government debt. Okay, now the government debt can be seen as something that is funny. Okay, so we can see that right here it increased a bit, then it dropped significantly. It dropped significantly from, this is 1993, it dropped to a very low value in 1996, then it also still dropped, then all of a sudden in what year is this? Okay, in 1998 it skyrocketed, and it went up to, I think, almost the highest, like second to the highest, in 1999, and then it's dropped down again. It got here, and then it became a bit steady, and it kept increasing over time, steadily. Okay, so that's about the government debt. Now let's see what the GDP was in the long run, because our GDP rather is something that determines how good the economy is. So we take the GDP rather, and then we can see that based on this simple line chart, we can see that our country was growing. So between the 1990s down to the 2014, the country was really okay. I think down to 2022, the country was growing. So it was growing a bit well between 1990 and 2000, and it kept growing significantly higher, getting better, and in 2014 the growth was a bit, nothing really much, but it was there, and at 2022 it just dropped. Like the country witnessed I really can't say I really don't know what to say, but the growth was really low. And in 2023 we have the lowest growth. In 2023 we have the highest growth when it comes to GDP in the year 2022. All right, so that is for the sum of GDP at 2010 constant basic prices. Okay, now let's see the same for the GDP at the constant market prices. Okay, we can see that the GDP at both the constant market prices and the constant basic prices, they kind of like have the same shape. Okay, the country was increasing, was changing, was growing, was developing, and got to the highest in the year 2022. And before we know what happened, everything just went downhill from there. Okay, that's very bad. That's really a very bad one. Okay, but may God help us all. So let's see what net taxes on products have on us. So this is the way the government was taxing products and companies and probably individuals. Okay, I say probably individuals because I don't think my country tax us, the individuals, but let's see. So the taxes was moving like this. It was a bit constant between 1990 and 2000. Okay, then it steadily started increasing from 2000. Okay, and at 2010 it spiked up to, what year is this? Okay, all right, so it spiked up 2010 at 857. Okay, well, that's not bad. So this was a tax, the average tax or something. So it kept fluctuating a bit, and then it kept moving. And at 2022, yeah, the tax was at the highest. Something is happening at 2022. I need to know what happened to the Nigeria economy, or the country of Nigeria as a whole in the year of 2022, based on this data set, and everything just drops from there. All right, so we can talk about the services too. We can do the same thing for service. We can see that it's still the same thing. It has the same shape of increasing, doing well, and before you know, boom, it's just always in 2022. So that's just us trying to work on. Excuse me. We can do for industry. The same thing happens for the industry. We can also do the same thing for the agriculture. Okay, we see that everything just happens at 2022. Everything just keeps dropping. Okay, and that is a bit painful as a Nigerian. So we've kind of visualized all of the variables, how they changed over the period of time, how they moved. Now let's try to get something straight. Let's try to compare the variables among themselves and see what we have. Okay, so to do that, I'll be doing a simple correlation analysis to see if there is a form of a relationship between variables. Okay, so let me come to the Nigeria economy. I come to data. Okay, then I come to correlation. Okay, I click on OK. The input range of data, so I select from here down to here. Okay, now the label rows, I label the rows first, and the output range, okay, it should be in a new worksheet, excuse me, and then I click on OK. Let's make this a bit bigger, clearer. So this is a correlation matrix for each of the variables. So we have the same variables on the x-axis on the horizontal row, and we have the same variables right here on the vertical row. Okay, so between inflation rates and okay, I won't be doing this with year, so we'll take year out of it. Okay, so between inflation rates and unemployment, there is a very low negative correlation between inflation rates. Now, one of the reasons why I would have loved to use SPSS for this is that whenever you make a correlation matrix on SPSS will obviously perform a statistical test to test on this correlation, to tell you whether this correlation is significant or not at either a 1% level of significance or 5% level of significance. Now, I don't know if the correlation value right here, this correlation here, I don't know if this negative correlation here is either significant or not, but I know that there's a bit of a negative correlation between this and this. I think I'll just get into SPSS. Should I do that? All right, so this is SPSS. Okay, please don't get scared. I just want to like get the correlation matrix and see if there is a significant correlation between the variables. Okay, so I come to analyze, I come to correlate, okay, by variates. So I just drop in all of the variables. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Options. So I think there's like nothing much. So I just test. It's a Pearson correlation. So now I want you to like perform a Pearson correlation and then do this at a two-tailed test, two-tailed, one-tailed, two-tailed, and then flag significant correlation. So when I click on OK, you will realize that so you see this value right now. So now it has correlated all of this. So the ones that have just one asterisk, if you come down here, you see that the one that have just one asterisk, it means the correlation is significant at 5% level of significance. Okay. And the one that has two asterisks, it means the correlation is significant at 1% level of significance. Okay. So let's try to see that. So we can see two asterisks right here. So that means industry and GDP. Industry and GDP, they have a positive correlation. So that simply means that if there is an increase in the industry, then there's obviously going to be an increase in the GDP. So that means the growth of a country is obviously sort of tied to the GDP, which makes sense. Obviously, the same thing with agriculture. Agriculture has a significant positive correlation with GDP. So that means if you try to produce more agricultural goods and we try to do well in agriculture, okay, it increases our GDP. You can see that. Now, when we come to the government debt, we can see that the government debt has a negative significant correlation, meaning if the government debt increase, okay, if it increases, then definitely it's going to decrease the GDP, which makes sense because the more the government owes money, it makes sense that the GDP of the country is supposed to like go down. We can see that for unemployment, there is a positive rate correlation between unemployment and GDP. I don't know how this is possible, but the software is saying that based on our data set, there seems to be a positive correlation between unemployment and GDP. Okay. Now, inflation rate is significant at 5% level of significance. We can also see that the net taxes is also having a very significant relationship with GDP. So this is something I can just paste this on the screen and you can just take a look at it, or you can just pause rather and then take a look at it and see. So this is just the relationship between each of the variables that makes up our data set. So let's get back into Excel. So now that we've kind of correlated and we've seen the relationship between the two variables, let's try to visualize and see some correlation based on the line chart or the bar chart. So I think I have to come back to Excel. Yeah, so I want to visualize inflation rates, unemployment, and government debt. Now you will notice that when you visualize these three at the same time, you will realize that between the year of 1990 and 2007, 2007, there was no form of I won't say correlation, there was no form of coordination between these variables. You see, this was going up here, this was just spiking out, and this was just going low, and everything was just scattered everywhere between 1990 and 2007. But from 2007, everything seemed like the three variables seems to have this how will I say this coordination among them. They seem to flow on the same path, they seem to flow the same way, they seem to sort of like agree with each other, and this interconnection is happening between them. Something happened in 2007 and we have to like find out from the historians. Okay, we can also do that for agriculture, industry, and services, and we can see that agriculture, industry, and services, they sort of have the same shape in the long run, meaning they increased, they became steady, and they dropped. So agriculture, industry, they practically have the same shape. Okay, everything was like moving the same way and nothing really much about that. Okay, so that is fine, that was way good. Just that the year of 2022, we need to know what happened. Okay, now let's take that away. All right, so excuse me, let's take that away. Now let's do for GDP, net taxes, and GDP. Okay, Now we can see that the GDP is having this shape, okay, and this shape is similar to that of the GDP at market prices too. It's the same thing, it's practically the same thing. I would like to see what happens with net taxes. So net taxes is a bit different, but that's just it. All right, so that's just it. So now that we've talked about each of the variables and then we've compared them with one another, okay, the next step is for us to perform regression analysis. And for us to perform regression analysis from the econometric standpoint, we need the three types of variables. We need the dependent variable, what we are trying to predict, okay, the independent variables, and the control variable. So those things that we want to like change and control to see how they affect something. So I'll be interested in probably, it depends on you. So when it comes to building a regression model right here, it all depends on you. It all depends on how you want to go about it, okay? So I'm interested in making inflation rates my dependent variable, okay? You can decide to probably want to predict unemployment, you might want to predict government debt. It doesn't mean anything, it's fine. So once you pick your dependent variable, try and pick independent variables too, okay? So I want to make these three, this five my independent variables. So that means unemployment, government debt, agriculture, industry, services are my independent variables, okay? Now, and then GDP at constant prices, net tax on products, and GDP at market price will be the control variable. So meaning I'll be inputting this into the model to see how it affects the model as a whole, okay? So let's start with doing a base model. So a base model is, you have your dependent variable and you have your independent variables, okay? These five of them, and none of this will be imputed. We will not put in these control variables. We won't add them yet. You understand? We won't add them yet. So since I have three control variables, I'll be having 4 models in total. The base model it has nothing to do with the control variables, any of this. The first model, so which is model 1, will include all of this from here down to here, but to include the this variable that does GDP at 2010, the constant basic price. Then this model 2 will be the regression model of everything from here down to here, and model 3 will be everything from here down to here. Understand? So let's start. So we can build a regression model on Excel. I would have loved to use SPSS obviously, but we can build a regression model on Excel also. So let's come to data analysis, okay? Multiple regression. All right, so that's it. So it asks for the input Y range. So the Y range is the independent variable. So I click on this, the labels are there. So the input range is going to be unemployment down to this exactly. Then the labels are there, and then it should be on a new worksheet. I really don't want to like talk on the residuals, the residual plots, standardized residuals, and line of plots. You know, if I'm supposed to build a standard econometric regression model, I will obviously have to perform some test for homoscedasticity, test for homogeneity, endogeneity, perform the test for multicollinearity and all of those stuff. But I don't want to like probably go into that right now. Maybe later videos I'll do that. So if you notice right now, I've selected inflation rate as my dependent variable, and all of this, unemployment, government debt, agriculture, industry, and services. Okay, please click on the labels when you know that you are selecting the rows, the labels like the name, and I click on OK. So, oh my bad, I think I made a mistake somewhere. All right, so let's do this again. Inflation rate, is that it? Yeah. All right, so let's go. All right, so this is our model. Let's all right, so this is it. I won't really talk too much. I don't want to like waste so much time. Okay, so the accuracy of our model can be based on the adjusted R squared. Okay, so the adjusted R squared is just what we use to determine how accurate our model is. Okay, and based on this, the accuracy in quotes of our model is 4.95%. So our model is 4.95%. So that means that if you are to predict inflation rates from all of these 5 variables right here, now you will be doing that at an accuracy of something around 4.95%. 5. That is a poor model. Okay, so that is the reason why we have control variables to inject and see what each of them will have. So I've actually made a video on how to build regression models and interpret all of these values, so I really don't want to like go in depth, you know, to analyzing this. Okay, for example, look at the unemployment rate. So the coefficient is minus 0.02, so that means there's a negative relationship between unemployment and inflation rate, but that relationship is not significant at a 5% or 10% or 1% level of significance, because the p-value is 0.9728, which is more than that. P-value is more than 5%. Okay, so nothing is even significant here, to be honest. None of the p-values are significant for each of the variables. Okay, none of them. So we can go back to our drawing sheet and input one of these. So our base model, so for our base model, we can just tag this as the base model. So for our base model, we have a 4.9% accuracy. Let's try to bring in something else entirely. So let's do this regression. All right, so for our inputs, so this time we bring in let's say we bring in the first control variable. So that's GDP at 2010, constant basic prices. So new worksheet, everything is set. Okay, all right, so, excuse me, just give me a second. Oh, my bad, that's on me. All right, so unemployment, yeah, exactly. All right, so let's arrange this. All right, so we can see that now the model has increased a bit when we did it increase? So this is 1.3. It's reduced. Wow, that's crazy. It's reduced from 4.94% to 1.38%. So the accuracy of our model has reduced, obviously. So this is model 1. Okay, then let's see for model 2. Let's see what we have. Let's see what we have for model 2. Okay, did I click on the wrong thing? All right, so let's go. All right, so model 2 is gonna be unemployment, including net taxes, okay, GDP and blah blah blah. So this is model 2. The home, let's bring this. There's a shortcut to do this, but I've forgotten. So the model 2, the adjusted R squared is reducing. Oh my god. So you see that as we input more variables, the accuracy in which we are going to be predicting the inflation rate is going to be very, very less. So if you do, so this is model 2. So that's that. So based on the R squared, our model is very, very bad. So that means so far the best model we have is the base model. That's model 1. So let's do for the last one. Okay. All right, so let's take this off. All right, so we just select all of this. Okay. Oh, all right, that's on me. Oh, that's my bad, excuse me. We select all of this. Okay. All right, for model 3, we are still going low. We are still really going low. So there are a couple of things that can be the cause of this. Okay, so the first may probably be that we cannot predict inflation rates. Probably another variable should be the dependence variable. Let's say probably the GDP should be the dependence variable and other variables should be the independence variable. You know, you have to play around it. So let me try to play around that and let's see what will happen. All right, so let me say I want to now predict GDP. Let's say we want to predict GDP. Okay, I'll just do this. If this makes more sense, then I'll leave you to do the rest yourself. Okay, so let's try to say we want to predict GDP. All right, so let's say from here down to here. Okay, now so let's do a base model for this. So base model will be inflation rate. So okay, let's decide on the dependent and the control. So let's make this 3 the control variables. That's inflation rates, unemployment, and government debt. Let's just make this 3 the the control variables. So that means it will be from here down to here exactly. Now let's see. Now you notice that in this case the adjusted R squared is looking good for some weird reasons. You can see the adjusted R squared is really looking good. So that means it should have been the other way around. Like we should have predicted GDP, all right, which makes sense. For God's sake, it makes sense. So we should have predicted GDP, and the standard error is really low compared with the standard error of model 2 that is quite high. So the standard error right here is really low. So if you are to predict the GDP at market price now 2010 and using inflation rates, unemployment rate, and government debt as your control variable, this is how you go for your base model. Then you start imputing, you start adding so let's start adding the what will I say, the control variables. Okay, let's see. So we'll include the first control variable, which is the government debts. Let's see what that have for us. Let's see. All right, so we have 96 right here. Okay, we have 96 right here. The first one we have, this is 96.42. This is 96.5 exactly. So this is our base. So base model was 96.55. The base the model 1 was 96.42. Then we can keep going, do the third one and just keep going. And this is how you build the econometric regression model. If you learned something new from this video and you enjoyed this video and you also made it to the end, I would really appreciate if you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to this YouTube channel. Do you feel like I missed something or you have some questions for me? Please don't hesitate to go down to the comment section and drop your questions and comments. I would be willing and be ready to attend to all of them. Thanks for making it to the end of this video. Do you need a statistical playlist that can help you to become a very good data analyst? I have a video right here that can actually help you out. Or do you need the pro tips that can also help you as a data analyst that is a beginner? I also have a video right here that you can check out. I will see you in the next one, and bye for now.